Hi, I'm Michael, and today we're going to be talking about filter pour-over coffee. Among the many different apparatuses that you can find within a kitchen for brewing coffee, pour-over is definitely the most hands-on and intricate of brewing techniques. So why pour-over? Pour-over is a very hands-on way of brewing coffee that can really bring out some of the more fruity, acidic, and tea-like qualities within your single origin coffees. One of the main reasons that we see people drinking more pour-over coffee than espresso coffee is because they're looking for something a little bit cleaner to drink, something that doesn't sit on the palate for as long, but still has quite a distinct flavor. Predominantly, it's used for single origin coffees to bring out their best flavors. For example, you could find berry notes within an Ethiopian or nutty flavor within a Brazilian, but it basically tailors that brew technique to bring out these flavors and to really emphasize those little notes. So we can't achieve a filter coffee without the equipment. So let's start talking about it. To start off, we've got our hand grinder. The main reason why we use a hand grinder as opposed to a larger grinder is to achieve a uniform grind size so that we can get a consistent brew throughout. It means less variables to play with. Next up, we have our brew reservoir, which is essentially where the coffee is going to end up at the end of the process. We have the cone, which holds the coffee inside the paper filter. A spoon, paper filters. Now these are specially designed for the cone so that they basically work in tandem. A set of scales, preferably something that gives you a 0.1 decimal place for a gram, a coffee of choice, and a gooseneck kettle. We choose a gooseneck kettle because of the fact that it can have very controlled temperature as well as control when we're pouring, which you'll see during the brewing process. Now, it's not necessary that you have a gooseneck kettle. This is probably one of the more expensive pieces of equipment in this setup. You can use a kettle at home, but you've just got to make sure that once it reaches boiling point, it can drop in temperature slightly so that you can control that variable, and just to have a little bit more control over the amount of water that you're pouring with such a wide spout. Okay, so one of the fundamentals of brewing a filter coffee, especially a pour-over, is the actual grind itself. And we can achieve this, as I said, with a hand grinder. So let's run through how to dial it in. On the bottom of the hand grinder, you'll generally find the dial. This is usually straight above where the coffee falls into, above the grind chamber as so. When dialing in a hand grinder, you want to make sure you know where zero is. So usually, as it is in this Comandante, you want to take this dial and turn it all the way clockwise until it stops. This is zero. It's essentially the finest setting that it has. And then once we find it, we want to work back to our grind setting. Now on this Comandante here, we go for 22 anti-clockwise clicks until we reach our desired grind size. We understand that your grinder at home may be set differently from brand to brand, but it also could be different from coffee to coffee. A good way to gauge what the right grind size is generally through tactile feel, so running it through your fingers. The texture that we're looking for is that of table salt. So if you need a reference while you're grinding, do a little bit and then have some table salt to try and see and find a similar feeling as you run it through your fingers. Once you've found that table salt texture, you basically can make a brew from there and then make alterations to make sure it suits your grinder as well as the coffee that you're using specifically. Placing the base back on the grinder, we can now start looking at actually grinding our coffee. With most hand grinders, the place where you put the coffee is just in the top, which is also connected to the handle, which makes the whole process happen. All right, so let's brew it. First thing we're going to do is weigh out some coffee beans. We're going to start with 15 grams of ground coffee, which is our dose, and we're going to end up with 220 grams of brewed coffee. So put simply, the recipe is the amount of coffee that you're using, which is the dose, and the yield, the amount of coffee that you end up with at the end of the process. And for those coffee nerds at home, that is a 1 to 15 coffee brew ratio. So for our coffee today, we have a lovely El Salvadorian honey processed single origin coffee. And we want to aim for roughly a little bit over 15 grams. And the main reason why we do this is because, like a sock in a washing machine, you're bound to lose a bean here and there. We have our coffee weighed out. We just have to grind it now. So negotiating with your grinder and popping it in the top, we want to basically bring it back to a neutral position. And we want to grind it in the most consistent way we can. The main reason why we do this is because if it stops and starts, you'll probably find that you get an inconsistency in the uniform nature of your grinds. But put it simply, you just get a better result if you try and remain as strong and circular as possible. This may take a while. She's ready. All right, let's reweigh it to make sure that we've got the right amount in the dose. Popping your dose cup back on the scales, we can use our spoon to start to weigh it out. Now, this is where we want to be particular. We want to actually hit 15 grams on the dot. Should be most of it, but you'll probably find that if you've done it right, it should be pretty much on the dot. We do have a little bit left, but that's pretty expected. So we've ground the coffee, congratulations. Now we've got to brew our kettle. Now, if you were smarter than me, you would have done this already, but unfortunately, you're with me. So we've got to sort this out together. Well, while we're waiting for the kettle to heat up, let's actually run you through what the brew chamber is going to look like fully constructed, starting with our reservoir, our cone, and our paper filter. Now, there's a little trick to the paper filter. What we want to do is we want to just fold over the crinkled edge and then bring it out to its cone shape and then drop it in the top. Nice and simple. So we also want to run some hot water through the actual brewing apparatus, and this will basically bring everything up to temperature, which means that we won't have that as a variable to play with. In addition, it'll also run hot water through the paper filter, and this will just basically increase the cleanness of flavor without any paper aftertaste. And while I've got you, I might as well sell you on our instant coffee. Are you a bachelor and don't know how to make coffee for yourself? This coffee is bold and strong, just like the man you want to be. What's that? You want it, you can't have it. This one's mine. Put it over there so your grubby hands can't get it. Running hot water through the apparatus is pretty simple. We just want to do a few circles. You don't have to do a specific amount. Just basically wet the filter and then let all the water fall through, which we'll then get rid of, like so. Doesn't take much, but it'll make a world of difference once we're finished. So we're actually ready to start brewing now. We've got our water up to temperature, which is roughly around that 93, 94 degree mark. And the reason why it's up to this temperature specifically is because we want to control two different things. It'll increase the acidity, the lower the temperature, and it'll increase the body, the higher the temperature. And for this one, the El Salvadorian honey process is best at 93 to 94 degrees because it brings out the best in its acidity as well as some of the body from that honey process. So let's just start adding it. We want to tear off our scales to make sure it's all zeroed out, bringing the amount of coffee in the filter to 15 grams, which is pretty much all of it because I've already weighed it. We're pretty much ready to go. So before we start pouring, I'm just going to run you through some of the basic techniques. We want to pour evenly and as controlled as possible into the center of the coffee to start, adding about 30 grams, and this is called the Blume. So starting our timer, we want to add about 30 mils of water, which will be represented in grams. And as the water starts making that contact with the coffee grinds, you'll see them start to expand and bloom. And that's what we actually call it, the Blume. And this is that first engagement of coffee and water, which starts to extract the oils, which will then bring out some of the more intense flavors in the coffee. Once 30 seconds has passed with the Blume present, we want to then add about 50 more grams of water, bringing it up to around about 85 grams. And this is the first iteration of our pouring. Now, as I'm pouring, I'm doing a nice circular motion to increase the consistency of the extraction, but I don't want to pour down the edge of the coffee because water will always find the easiest path through a surface. So if you pour it down the edge, it'll go straight into the bottom of the chamber without actually making any contact. In our next pour, we want to just add another 50 grams of water, bringing it up to about 135. We want to be doing our pours at iterations of 30 seconds each, and this just helps with the consistency of the overall brew. You should be able to achieve the end of your brew within 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes, and within about 4 to 5 pours, including the Blume. And on the last one, you want to hit about 220, as we stated for our brew recipe. And then once it's here, we just want to let it finish off by itself using gravity. If you find that your brewing time exceeds 3 minutes, you'll probably find that it's too fine, which means that you may need to make that coffee grind a little bit coarser, or vice versa. If it is taking no time at all, it could be too coarse, which means that, you just got to make it a bit finer. And you can achieve this just by making a couple of little alterations to the amount of clicks that you make in the actual hand grinder itself before you start. So now that the coffee brewing process is done, we can take our cone off and we should be left with 220 grams of coffee for you to enjoy. So I suppose there's only one thing left to do. You just got to bring your favorite cup, give yourself a serving, and then have a go. See what you think, have a taste, and just suss it out. So straight away, you get this flavor of maple, cooked stone fruit with a little bit of orange zest on the back end. Once you're more comfortable with actually brewing pour over coffee like this, it's a good opportunity when you do one to another, make small changes, have a play. It's a part of the fun and you could say just the overall vibe of coffee. It's never going to be the same, but with all of this, we can at least strive to achieve it. And then that's pretty much it. This has been an absolute pleasure having you join us on brewing filter coffee through the pour over method. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, ask us in the comments or via an email. But at the end of the day, we're here for you. Enjoy your coffee. Thank you so much. Dobby's done bad things. Do you know why I'm no son of yours?
Sorry, Batman.
Another thing that I'd like to mention is that, hopes and dreams are made with coffee and community is built by micros. So you should definitely subscribe because, if you can't be alone if you're part of a community.
Join the cult today and get 10% off.
Exactly.